quick review of attendance. We have a quorum, so we can get started. I know a couple of the members notified me that they're going to be late due to conflicts, but we'll be joining, and I think some have to leave early. So we'll jump right into it. One of the things, can everybody see my screen all right and hear us okay? See some nodding?
Yes.
Excellent.
Yes, yes.
I hear Sue. Sue, I saw you in the news the other day.
Ah,
Delta Dental,
yep.
right? Named to the board.
Yep. Yep.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
So, today's agenda, I don't know if we'll have the full 2 hours. My thought is it's probably closer to 90 minutes worth of about 90 minutes worth of content, but we'll see how it goes, especially with some of the discussion and the coordinator activities. But we're going to review any corrections, comments from the January meeting. I want to table till at least one more of the board member, council members are here. I think either Joe Duncan or Eric Kilmuth, to make sure that we talk about the moving of the council meeting. That was something that we had discussed at our last meeting and have a placeholder on. Also, we'll need Joe Duncan here to talk about any legislative updates. It's the one that we've been tracking related to advanced metering or whatever, and the water space, and it had a cybersecurity component. And I will say the Cybersecurity Advisory Council's name has been thrown around a significant amount as it relates to that, both under the dome and in discussions in the administration as to how to handle this. So I would prefer, I don't see Joe here yet. We'll have him on. And then we're going to have sector-specific updates. It is, I think there's a lot to report out in these areas. All of these 4 groups have established a regular cadence, are meeting. And interestingly, it reflects kind of the meetings reflect kind of where each of the sectors are in cybersecurity maturity. And so they're all working in different spaces. It's kind of like what's good and priority. But we'll get some updates on those. And then coordinator activities, so things that I've been working on, specifically around the state and local cybersecurity grant program and some other things. And one idea that I would like to float to the council. And then open discussion. I don't know if he's joined yet, but we have someone that's involved with the defense industrial base in Vermont that has interest and wants to, Mr. Robert Henke, discuss potential for collaboration as it relates to cybersecurity maturity model requirements coming from the DOD or DOW, depending on how you want to look at the department. But an interesting topic. We spent some time last week, and I think there's maybe opportunity to connect certain people. I'm excited to see Lieutenant Colonel Gallup along. Excuse me. And I think that's it. And then we'll be moving on to adjournment, and then either meeting in July or August, depending on the wishes of the council. Any questions, comments, additions? Either raise your hand or put them in the chat, and if not, we'll jump right in. Get through this. And once again, I want to say thank you to all those that are not on the council that have joined today. Hope you find these valuable and at least informative as to the work of the council, and we appreciate your involvement. And even a former CISA rep I see joined. So, all right. On the website was the recap for the meeting 13, the January 2026 meeting. Was there anyone that had any questions, comments, corrections for that meeting or the the recap? I'll wait a minute and see if anybody raises a hand or points anything out. Okay, hearing nothing, we will let the meeting recap stand as published. It's Robert. Seeing Joe on yet. All right. Again, I want to wait, at least have one more council member before we talk about moving this, because we will need a motion and second and vote by the council if we do end up moving the advertised July meeting to August and holding it in person at the digital summit. So we'll come back to that. And a couple of things I wanted to touch on. I alluded to it. Joe Duncan's not on. Joe is done. I think he had to testify yesterday afternoon. I don't know if it got canceled for a third time or if he was able to testify. Yeah. So there was Senate Bill 213, which made crossover and is in the House now at where? Digital infrastructure. It's in digital infrastructure and energy. Which deals primarily with some statutory obligations around advanced metering in the water space. I'm not going to try and do it justice because it's changed, has gone through many iterations, but what was originally included was some, let's characterize it as rigorous cybersecurity language that from like a technical perspective seemed, I won't say it was out of place, but it seemed premature, right? When those on the council saw the data from the survey and assessment that we did in the summer of 24, we know there are a lot of opportunities in certain sectors, in something that is currently, as they're built and implemented, is on the lower risk threshold right now, and would take away attention from addressing some other things, right? Like ensuring SCADA systems have been updated and configured appropriately, or true segmentation of a network to make sure that OT and IT were separated, and things that can have a real impact on a water systems operation was a lot of what was discussed. And currently, as it stands, I think Joe, as of yesterday, and I said earlier, the Cybersecurity Advisory Council has been referenced significantly in the discussions. And now in statute, it's actually going to be, it's proposed anyway, what's not in statute, but what's in the proposed bill, is that Cybersecurity Advisory Council would issue, I'm going to paraphrase here, but like non-binding guidance to water system operators around best practice for cybersecurity. So more of a generalized thing. Interestingly, we met the water wastewater working group, had its most recent meeting just yesterday. And we talked about this, and I think the Cybersecurity Advisory Council, through some of the work that's going on there and stuff, is actually well positioned to be able to develop something and deliver it and meet that language requirement if the bill becomes law as it's currently written. So I wish Joe was here to be able to speak more about it, but I think we'll come back to that when he joins us. The other item is that we had included in our annual report for the second year in a row the need to expand to some other critical infrastructure sectors membership of this council, so that we have representation, voting representation from uh, like telecom, internet service area. And I want to say local government were the two that we asked for this year to expand. Um, those made it into a draft bill, but they never moved out of committee, correct? Yeah, they're stuck on the wall. So we will see no membership changes for this year. So probably for the third year in a row, it'll be part of our annual report saying that, we're missing some important players, especially in the ISP, telecom, cellular space. I think there is their participation would help on a number of fronts, I believe, whether or not it gets into anything that's meaningful for them. But I think their understanding and technical knowledge would be a good addition to the council. So we will see. We'll try again next year, and maybe that bill will. Is this the end of the biennium? So the board gets wiped off. Right. So if it didn't move off the wall, it'll get recycled. So we'll have to find someone else to try and sponsor a bill next year. So unfortunate that for 2 years asking for an update that they haven't, what seems like simple changes, move forward. Any questions on that, or is there any council members tracking other things cybersecurity related in the state house that they would like to share? Hearing none, we'll continue. If something pops into your head, feel free to add it in the chat, or otherwise raise your hand and we can come back to that. All right. We have next is the report outs by sector. Like I said, the working groups are finding a routine cadence and making good progress. Eric Helmuth and Joe Duncan are on, and they're the representatives to water, wastewater, and essential supply chain. So we will have to come back to those, or if they don't join before the end of the meeting, I can give a recap. So I think we'll start with energy. Erica, I saw you join. Would you be so kind as to give us just a brief overview of the work of the group in energy?
Sure thing. So the DU Energy Working Group, that's what we're calling it. We've met twice so far, once in February, once in April, and we are planning to meet again in June, at the beginning of June. We've had representation from GMP, BED, VGS, VEPSA, STOW, Vermont Electric Co-op, and VEIC so far. The conversations have been mostly technical and sharing of experiences and trends that each organization is seeing at the moment. We've discussed a Department of Public Service communications policy that we'll be working with the state in the next 2 weeks when we meet as a group with Bill Jordan under the header of DPS. We also talked about the Black Current exercise, which is a Vermont emergency management tabletop that'll be coming up in July with participation from most, if not all, utilities. I think the guest list or attendees is still being ironed out, but that's our group in a nutshell.
Thank you, Erica. I appreciate that update, and I appreciate you moving that group forward. Mark or Sue or both, would you guys like to speak to the healthcare one? there's Mr. Duncan.
Yeah, I mean, we had our first meeting, we had some representation from certain areas, and I think the key action item coming out of our meeting was to try to garner more representation from other actual healthcare delivery organizations. And move forward from there. And I think we need to sync on that and see if anyone's been able to reach anybody who is willing to participate. I know we were I don't know, offering some things to see if people might respond more to different types of communication. So that's the biggest hurdle for us, is getting people to actually want to join.
Yeah. Sorry, Mark, I hadn't followed up with you. We, at least through the channels I outreached, we did gain a member. I think it's Springfield Hospital.
Okay.
Well, it's a smaller independent hospital, which I think would be a good addition.
Yeah.
No takers from Rutland or St. Johnsbury.
Okay.
So
it's a great start. So we can.
Yeah. Yep. And if anybody on the phone has a former connection, somebody they know or whatever that works in the tech space in a healthcare delivery hospital type setting, we would love to get connected with them, because as Mark said, it's been a challenge to get folks to come to want to participate. Sue, is there anything you wanted to add or thoughts from your perspective?
Nope, that's pretty much, I think I left a little bit early, but that's where we left at the last meeting, was trying to wrestle the bushes a little bit, see what we could find.
Yeah, and our next meeting, I believe, is next
Tuesday.
Right. Afternoon. Yep. So hopefully we'll have at least one more, and we'll get started on some figuring out what's next for that working group. I see Joe Duncan is here. Joe Duncan, how are you?
I am good. Sorry, I'm a little late.
I'm going to put you in the hot seat for a couple minutes because I skipped over. Well, I tried to give a brief overview of S213 and the activities and how the Cybersecurity Advisory Council has been referenced significantly there in the language changes in the proposed bill. But why don't we start with water, wastewater sector specific updates?
Sure. Our group continues to meet quarterly. We've got to continue to have a group of small, medium, and large drinking water, wastewater systems. We also have invited A&R reps, one from water, one from wastewater, to participate. And then we also have standing invites to some of the cybersecurity realm professionals, CISA, VIC, FBI, emergency management. So we've had a variety of tenants from some of those associations outside of that attending. CISA obviously is a bit of a loss at the moment with not having a local rep. So we did have a meeting yesterday, and our focus continues to be to try and get informed on the threat landscape, as well as understand the resources available to us through emergency management from a prevention and response perspective, and really in those spaces during those conversations kind of flush out the state of things in the water and wastewater world that will hopefully ultimately lead us to providing some sector specific recommendations back to the overall CAC to ultimately make it into the next annual report. So that's kind of the status of where we're going with it. I think next quarter is FBI. I think is that our next goal for the next one. I think, Sean, when I recall from yesterday.
I think we're actually doing every other month, and so it'll be June.
Sorry, it is every other month, isn't it?
Yeah, time flies.
Yeah,
we're doing cybersecurity stuff. Yes, Leah Bogdanovich from the FBI cybersecurity special agent is invited, and she'll be kind of coming in and joining the group to do both introductions, overview of what services she represents in the federal space, and anything that is water, wastewater sector specific that she can share from her work.
I also know we kind of were reviewing the pillars of cybersecurity as well to see how that fits in with the water wastewater sector. And then we also are since the group was there, we also kind of reviewed what was going on legislatively to that impacts the water wastewater world, and S213 was the primary topic for us, which was an interesting twist on water meters. Started out as water meter cybersecurity concerns. Then it floated into just a general cybersecurity. Try and heighten that for the drinking water to play a role in A&R to play a role, bigger role in that, and then that ultimately got changed to just having some general language where the secretary of the A&R has the ability to request to the CAC the specific recommendations for guidance on topics as needed, and that is odd because, in my opinion, that already exists. So it's been a very interesting bill that's out there. Testified yesterday on it, and it ended with one representative on the committee asking us, "Do you think this is a necessary bill?" And the answer was no, and he said, "Thank you." So I'm not sure where that stands now. Hopefully it's dying, but we'll see. That's the update I have.
Yeah. Thank you, Joe. And I think if nothing else comes from all of the testimony related to that bill, there has been at least an elevation in awareness of the council's work and what it can do there or can do on behalf. I think there are people now that understand that they don't need to necessarily start to enter the regulatory space in cybersecurity, that they can lean on the council, right, to provide guidance and support those things. So at least with the committees that of jurisdiction that we're dealing with this bill, I think they've heard that a number of times. So I think that's helpful.
Agreed. It is good that I did end my testimony with, I do thank you for talking about drinking water and cybersecurity. And that hopefully they understand the landscape and where the role of the CAC is. So, like you said, Sean, I think it's good that it's being brought up, but hopefully it has kind of brought the focus back to the CAC.
Yep. Yeah. Well, thank you for all your work on that. And I'm glad to hear that you got to testify yesterday and you weren't postponed yet again.
Yeah, I was surprised. That was good.
Excellent. I need to go back because I wanted either you or Eric to be on before we discussed moving the July meeting to August. So this is for the council members. One of the things that we had discussed at the January meeting was the state of Vermont, ANC Digital Services sponsors an event. I think this is going to be what, the third year, called the Digital Summit. I think it was attended by a couple hundred last year. Mix of vendors, people that are interested in government technology and actually private sector. I think it's a diverse group, and it's going to be held this year on August 4th at the DoubleTree by Hilton, South Burlington. So right by exit 14. For people like my age, we're across from where Gaines used to be. But what we had talked about in January was the idea of maybe moving our July meeting to hold it in person at the digital summit. There seemed to be some interest in that. So both getting folks from the council to come to the digital summit and see what it's about, but also to then have like an in-person opportunity for attendees at the digital summit to sit in and get feedback, share stuff with the council, maybe help us get additional information to help shape what we're going to be doing, you know, in the next year. I floated it with the secretary. She was supportive of it. She thinks it's a good idea. And I actually think the agency digital services also has an artificial intelligence council, and they're considering doing the same thing. So it would be an opportunity if you came to maybe also, then we will make sure we don't schedule them at the same time. So you could sit in and see what's going on as it relates to artificial intelligence policy and matters at the same event. So I got to be there regardless, or I likely will be there. But I want to open it up to the council and see thumbs up, thumbs down, if there's any discussion, questions about doing that, or do you want to keep a July meeting and not go to the digital summit? Either way.
I think it's a
That makes-
great idea. So I give it a big thumbs up.
Yeah, makes sense to us.
Sounds good.
Excellent, excellent. I see the lieutenant colonel in person. Nice. Got to see him there anyway last year, so it was nice. Who else do we have? Mark, would it be an issue for you?
No, totally fine.
All right. Joe, how about yourself?
Yeah, I think it's a good idea. It works for me. I mean, I'm also conveniently located down the road, but I actually think it's a good idea despite its convenient location.
Erica, what about you?
Yep, I can make that work.
Excellent. Mr. Lehman, any concerns from yourself? Would you be willing to participate up there in person?
Yep, that sounds good. That should work.
Excellent. Thank you. I know the secretary is in. Yes. Erica, did I ask you? Yes. JT, would that be something that you could,
Yes.
would that work for you? Excellent. That would be awesome. Ryan, are you on? I do not see Mr. McLiberty on. All right. But it sounds like, at least from a poll, that we're open to it. So at this point, we will need a motion, a second, and then we'll have to put it to a vote to the council.
So moved, Joe.
Second, Eric.
Okay, so council folks, the motion is to move the July meeting to August 4th, hold it at the Digital Summit at the Doubletree and by Hilton in South Burlington. All those in favor say aye, raise your hand, or somehow other signify.
Aye.
Aye.
6. Anyone opposed? 7. Anyone choosing to abstain? Unanimous. All right. Thank you very much, everyone. I think it's going to be an interesting day, and I look forward to meeting some of you in person for the first time after a couple of years. So I think it's going to be a wonderful event. We'll have to make sure we get a room, decent sized room reserved that we can hold it in. So, and excellent. Thank you. So we will move forward with that. So I will update calendar invites. We will probably not know the time. We will shoot for the same time. It may not be a full 2 hours. It might be more like an hour event because of being in person and kind of accommodations. We'll have to see how that goes, but I will update everyone's calendar invites to reflect the new date at the very least. So thank you all. We went through S213. So Eric has not joined, Mr. Hillmuth, but I can probably do it. And I saw Mary Knapp. Are you still on the call?
I am.
All right. So please correct me if I go astray as I try to give an update on behalf of the Essential Supply Chain Working Group. Mary is actually a member of that working group, and I'm excited to see her join us today and at the larger council meeting. And so, Essential Supply Chain met last week, was their most recent meeting. Membership is kind of diverse in that Eric is Vermont Gas Systems. The majority of the members are in finance or insurance, but also we have Colchester Police Department. So it's kind of a diverse collection. But I will say it is I think the membership is outstanding. The discussions that we have had to date have been thoughtful and in depth in it. And it's showing because I kind of polled the working group at the end of the last meeting. And one of the things that seems to resonate is that just having a place for them to get together and talk kind of among peers has been helpful. In addition, the work that where the essential supply chain kind of landed on after its first meeting was to kind of focus on disaster recovery. It seemed to be the item that was of most interest to the folks that are part of the working group, and that's where we spent a lot of time. This past meeting was talking about a little bit of lessons learned, a little bit about like what could be done, better. What are like the varying degrees of disaster recovery preparedness, and then really a lot about how even in what I would call fairly mature cyber organizations, kind of still not the strongest connection that it should be between technology disaster recovery and the business's continuity of operations. And that's where we've kind of been kind of coalescing around and talking about what are things that people can do. An interesting one. So, and this is what I'm enjoying sitting in some of the groups, is that they all have varying they reflect where the membership is at. And so they're looking at things from varying perspectives. Right? Wastewater is, heavily doing invitations to people that can kind of like talk about the threat landscape. The meeting before the last one, the state CISO, John Tony on the call here, came in and gave a good overview, talked a little bit about threats, different resources that are available, things like that and stuff. But on an interesting one on the essential supply chain, the conversation really pivoted to like AI. And so the next meeting, which is June, we've invited the state's AI director, Josiah Raish, to join. And it's going to be a discussion around like the intersection of AI, cyber risk, managing AI, right? So that you're not putting your organization at risk, those types of things. So different perspectives or different groups are seeing kind of focus areas that are different, which will help instead of like all of us coming back together for the annual report, all having just variations on the same thing. It's going to be like distinctly different areas that have kind of garnered attention and progress been made. So did I summarize okay, Mary?
That looks pretty good from my notes.
Excellent. Thank you. Eric is off the hook. So good. I think that's all 4 sections. I'm going to pause there and see if any of the council members have like questions for their peers or any questions about the working groups. And the work they're doing. Okay. Rolling right along. Gonna be more like an hour. So one of the things that when we changed the format at the end of calendar year 25 was to make sure that there was opportunity, because I'm kind of, I don't know, the connective tissue on a lot of this, to make sure that I brought everyone up to speed as to within the quarter what I had been working on, both either representing the Cybersecurity Advisory Council or in my other role, which is the state is helping with the state and local cybersecurity grant program. So a significant amount of work has been going into the state and local cybersecurity grant program. One of the folks that is the point on it and that I work with to help move that forward, David Kaiser's on the call. But we finally have the first contract. We're about to sign, or we're close to signing the contract for the first 3 projects, which are for municipalities, for a handful of municipalities. They're going to be moving from their domains to a .gov domain, getting training, CompTIA Security Plus training, and or implementing multi-factor authentication at the municipality. And so we're seeing progress there. So for those of you that have ties to critical infrastructure that is municipally owned, that's a step in the right direction. We've also worked on revising the cybersecurity plan, which is like whatever we do has to tie back to the cybersecurity plan that's been submitted to DHS. But as everyone knows, DHS has, for the most part, been on vacation for the last 6 months. They only work intermittently. So we're maybe in a little bit of a holding pattern until they're back in some meaningful way to review that. But that opens up, I think currently we have 4 approved projects. We've added 15 to that. So there will be, when it's approved, if it's approved as we submitted it, we will have 19 different projects that municipalities can utilize to help improve their cybersecurity posture. Everything from like SCADA evaluation and remediation to network hardening, endpoint detection and response to assistance in policy development. So, and a bunch of other projects that are a mix of both technical, like perimeter defenses, implementing new firewalls, things like that, to incident response plan, planning and policy type work. So that's an area that I think I'm seeing a convergence where I am utilizing the work of the working groups, right? What I'm hearing and stuff to inform at least how we go to municipalities, what to offer, what services would be beneficial, and vice versa. I think you're going to see it in a minute. Identifying meaningful resources for the municipalities on the state and local cybersecurity grant program that I think can be adopted, endorsed, and in some way become a product of the Cybersecurity Advisory Council, especially as it relates to like the language proposed in S213, right? If that bill becomes law and the language stays as is, the Secretary of Natural Resources will probably be asking us for some sort of fundamental guidance that they can utilize. So they're starting to see crossover that between the two that can help. And I think that's good in the long term for the state. Thank you, Robert. Next one was, this came up in the last meeting in January. Adam Gamlin, who I saw is on, was our CISA rep at the time and connected myself with the village of Barton. I just wanted to follow up on that. We met with them in the context of the state and local cybersecurity grant program, have done like a preliminary assessment and have identified a couple of projects that we're waiting for the VHS review of our updated cybersecurity plan for us to be able to then move forward with those projects. So it was a good example of, through the council, getting plugged in with someone that has a need, but then going out there, being able to sit down with them and know that there are funding opportunities at least on local municipal, governmental fronts that we can connect them with to address it. So just wanted to kind of, since it was brought up in the last one, kind of close the loop on that. And then the next is, this was the document, I think Joe mentioned it. I know Mary and the Essential Supply Chain Working Group has seen it, and she's actually giving me some really good feedback on it. But it's a document that I was creating in support of the state and local cybersecurity grant program, but realized that I should bring it to this group to see if it's something that makes sense for the council to adopt, publish, endorse, in some way, make it part of this also. So that's the working title is the cybersecurity pillars. So I'm going to stop right there. And before I go, because I have to switch over and share our Word document, see if there's any questions for me about these kind of activities, or if there's comments. All right, seeing none, no hands raised, or I am going to. Here it is. So currently, this is kind of turned into a 26-page document. So what started out was me trying to think about answering a question that came about out of a meeting with contract and legal specialists around how to do some state and local cybersecurity grant program contracting. What was posed as a question kind of highlighted lack of something that was like our foundation, right? Something that we could always point back to and make sure that as we are doing our assessments of municipalities, that we're doing it consistently, that as we're developing projects to deliver services, we're doing it consistently, and to kind of give municipalities something to follow that helps them kind of from where they are to know what the next steps are. And as I did it, I started sharing it with the working groups and wanted to share it with the council to see if this has, like I said, merit to adopt and maybe evolve, or it becomes part of an annual report or something like that. I'm not sure, but I wanted to go through it. So it's, like I said, the working title is pillars, but it's really kind of discussing, gets into like what feels like the 12 steps that get you from crawling to running the cybersecurity space. I don't know how I struggle with how to describe it and like what metaphor makes sense, but so it's organized in 3 tiers or categories. The first is like the foundational stuff. It is written for local government, right? So as you read this, It's written for, you know, a town, a city, a village to be able to understand, and written specifically to them. But this could extend to something like I see Christine Hallquist on the screen here, right? And I think this could extend to communication union districts, right? If they're looking for some as part of is it the BEAM, the latest round of funding, right? There's cybersecurity components. Maybe there is something in here that can assist with that, or it can be applied to the education space or privately owned critical infrastructure. But it was written originally for municipalities. So it goes through the foundational, which is really there should be no barrier of entry because there are no costs associated with this. This is things that you can do with the resources you have and a little bit of time, right? Which is starting by just designating somebody that's going to have this as part of their responsibilities. Everyone knows, right, that if you've been in the cyberspace long enough, if you don't know what you have, you can't protect it. So asset inventory is key. And then governance policies, right? Everything else you want to do on that, you got to have something you can fall back on, right? So having things like acceptable use and password and, you know, user management and third party, fourth party responsibilities, things like that, can fall within that. And then the next is calling it hardening the perimeter and identity, which focuses on things like running multi-factor authentication, having some sort of form of perimeter security, implementing vulnerability management, patching updates, you know, ensuring that the things that are known at least don't bite you. And then again, this is written towards the towns, right? But moving to a .gov domain, those are key elements. And then the third phase is kind of like you know, you've hit these basics, and now you're on to doing things like endpoint detection and response, your DR system, your verified backups, security awareness training, right? As much as we want to focus on the technical, often our risks lie in folks that may not recognize an email that is a phishing attempt, or I don't know how to inspect it to make sure that the link is valid, those types of things. Incident response plan and active threat intelligence. Again, this was written in the context for municipalities, so it talks about resources like MSISAC. And then it goes on to list some resources and stuff, but then each one of these has a single sheet that goes a little deeper, gives a little bit more statistics, or, you know, something to hook people on, right? Some sort of meaningful stat that helps tell the story of why this is important. It's a designated cybersecurity lead one, right? You know, it talks about what should be within their purview. One of the interesting things, and then it gives some real world examples, right? So people can have context. One of the things is, and I'm going to look at Mary is, but this came out of, I took this from the discussion with the Essential Supply Chain group, working group, in that we were looking specifically at the backup one as I was reviewing this, but they pointed out there are degrees of maturity within these. And so since then, last week, I spent a little bit of time saying that's true, right? I mean, just because you may be doing backups doesn't mean you're doing everything that you need to be truly prepared in a disaster recovery scenario, right? And so each one of these now has a level 1, 2, and 3, right? So this is written so that within each one of these, municipality, right? It's that's the initial audience, can look at it and be like, oh yeah, well, we're doing level 1, but we should really get to level 2 at a minimum, and that's right. And then we need to do this to get to that. So it kind of, each one of them goes through and has established at least 3 levels of maturity. I think we're going to blow the backup one up in the essential supply chain next meeting and really look at that, and probably will end up with more than 3 levels. But I stole that idea and kind of used it to seed it. And then the last thing it does is these seem to be so this is a little bit back to the Cybersecurity Advisory Council, right? In statute, we are supposed to look at I think it's the standards and protocols is the language in statute relating to cybersecurity and how they apply to different sectors. But when you look at what's in play for most organizations, right, they tend to align to one of these, right? The CISA's, CPGs, the NIST, CSF, or the CIS controls. So as I was developing this, I was like, well, if an organization wants to like map how they're making progress to one of the standards, it would be good to know what this pillar supports. So we've kind of mapped that out for folks so that, oh, if we address this and we kind of get to level 2 at least, we're going to have satisfied CIS controls version 8.1, control 17.1 and 14. And I think that will help as organizations mature. It's not going to be, but it'll also, I think if the council chooses to like adopt this in some way, I think it helps meet that statutory requirement for us to look at standards and protocols, because we now have the work that we're driving through the working groups mapped to the recognized 3 of the standards. And then because the audience is for the state and local cybersecurity grant program, the municipalities, we've mapped each one of these to the different SLCGP projects that a municipality could utilize to get assistance to improve in this space. And so that's that one, asset inventory. We'll go down to one that's a little bit more technical, right? MFA, right? So it talks about the merits of MFA, but it maps to the different standards and then to the specific project that we have for in the SLCGP to allow municipalities to implement it. It's a lot, but I wanted to kind of present it to the council to plant the seed that this is something that we're doing and seems to be effective in another area, as I've shown it to 2 of the working groups so far. It seems to resonate with them. So I wanted to bring it to the council, and we don't need any action on it, but I would like to have at least, I think I distributed it with last week's email, but I will redistribute it because it's a constantly evolving document. So I'll send it out after this meeting, but have folks consider whether or not we should do something formal around this as part of the council. Peter Nelson in the chat under foundational, I'd also add baseline device configuration. Duly noted. Thank you. Any council members have thoughts, questions, comments, feedback?
Have you given any thought to how you'd morph the .gov recommendation for all the other sectors that can't use .gov?
A little
Just
bit.
curious.
I have. Yeah. There are some like standards around. I'm trying to remember what bear with me if I get there. I see JT, you came off mute. Was there something you wanted to add while I find what I was looking for?
Yeah, I have thoughts. Is this a more of a guidance document, or is this a standard that we're working toward?
I hope that we never get into the standards business. There seems to be plenty of other people that do standards. My gut was that this is like an endorsed guidance document, right? For people that don't know where to kind of turn next, they can pick this up and start making progress.
Okay.
That's how I was thinking about it. What are your thoughts?
It's a very complex machine, right? And it's
Yes.
I'm concerned about know your audience, right? We're dealing with municipalities, localities with absolutely no resources who may not know what some of these acronyms are. That doesn't take away from us doing the right thing and sharing it with them. It's just a matter of, how we deliver it as guidance or a document that invites them to ask more questions or look at more things, but certainly not an end all be all, because I can look at something on this that's a major component the state doesn't have just because it's not funded. If the state's not funded for a big component of this, I don't want to assert that, everybody can do everything, because that's certainly not reasonable.
Yes, agreed. And that came up actually in the water and wastewater meeting yesterday as we were looking at it. The same point was brought up, right? That often the audience for this isn't going to be able to make heads nor tails of it as it sits. And so because this is going to go to and intended for municipalities and support SLCGP, we're working on developing a once a month webinar that will run 4 months that will step through each one of these, right? So municipalities can come in, we'll go through like an overview of it, talk about the projects that support it, and then kind of get into like context and explanations and definitions and answer questions. And I'm hopeful, right, that will help bridge at least some of that gap that you're talking about. We'll see if it does or doesn't, but.
So, well, I think another opportunity would be, as we go through, if our intentions are to communicate, coach, guide, answer questions, we can take all kinds of stuff that my team has. We can take state policies. We can take whatever guidance documents we have. I think this would be an opportunity to use our chief AI officers team and we can create a bespoke standalone chatbot for municipalities so they can ask these questions, right? So rather than having someone dig through all this and maybe not understand, if they want to ask a question to a chatbot, we enrich, that might be a outcome rather than a PDF on a website.
I like that. Yes, that makes sense. I think,
and so we can do things like, what is the ADS policy on passwords, right? And somebody in Rutherford wants to know, that person can ask the chatbot, it gets spit out, they can choose to copy it, amend it, however. But I think that would be more end user friendly than just a PDF.
Yeah, I think I like where you're going with that, because I think we have to recognize, right, is that in these communities, they're all over the place. There's some that are going to want to like come in and have their hand held, right, and have you like sit down one-on-one with them in their office, right, and help walk them through it. And there's going to be some that are going to be like self-serve, and there's going to be everything in between. And so, yeah, those are good points. I just made note of that. I think I will give you full credit, but I will follow up with Josiah.
Thank you.
Where was I going? Oh. So to your question, Sue, about like non.gov, right? I think some of the DNSSEC, DMARC type stuff could apply as guidance for any organization, regardless of the .gov, right? So it's, I think there's some other things we would have to shape, but I'm starting to think about how would this extend beyond just local municipalities, but it's a good question.
Yeah, I mean, I was getting way too tactical or specific, but that's what I was trying to imagine in my head, is how this could be the same document, the same process, whether that process is implemented via self-serve in a PDF or AI or handholding. It'd be nice to know that everybody was following the same process and it was consistent, right? Is that what your goal is?
Well, my goal is to see everyone kind of like get to a certain minimum, because of most organizations in Vermont at some point are holding my information personally, right? So I want
Yeah.
to see them have like a certain minimum. But for me, the real goal is to try and land on something that resonates with the majority of folks that aren't cybersecurity professionals, that help them just understand what they need to do next and why. And because it seems like I had this when I went out in Barton Village. Next week, Ryan McLiberty and I are meeting with Swanton Village. And you sit down with these folks, and they're not opposed to doing it, but they just need they just need a means by which to understand where they should put their energies, right? Because this stuff is competing with culvert replacements and other demands on the municipality, education funding, and right, all the other things that a municipality has to deal with, road maintenance. And so, but once you start talking to them, they're like, oh yeah, that makes sense. Right. And then, and so this is kind of like, for me, I was thinking of this as like, these become the leave behinds, right? It's like after we've met with someone, we kind of like get them to a certain level of understanding, answer any questions they have, make sure that they at least get the basics of the vocabulary. It's like, I think you're a candidate to work on these next couple of items, right? And then these are the things you leave behind with them that give them just a little bit more understanding.
Yep.
That's how I'm looking at it.
Yep.
They're not necessarily that they can live independently, but that they have to, they're meant to be part of an ongoing conversation.
And do you think it's a good idea or a bad idea to create a scorecard around these now that you added the levels?
So
they can track progress, but I'm also thinking sometimes scorecards can be demotivators too.
Yeah, I guess I'm not there yet that we're even at a maturity to think about scorecarding. I think I would much rather people just use it and be honest and be like, yeah, we're level 1, but we want to get to level 2. Okay, great. Let's talk about what that means for you.
Yeah.
And let's help you figure that out and see if we got a project to help fund it. Mr. Duncan, is that you with your hand up?
Yeah, and it's I know you had kind of mentioned what I was going to say about what we talked about at the wastewater sector discussion yesterday. And for me, it comes down to I'd have to go back and look at the exact language that we are tasked with. But if I remember correctly, we are tasked, the Cybersecurity Advisory Council is tasked with developing best practices for policies or something like that, or procedures that are for state government, businesses, and the public. And it was sort of this very broad grouping of a lot of different things, which the water and wastewater sector had trouble figuring out how to even give guidance to the water wastewater sector solely because of the fact that there's such a variance across there. And I think for our group, this PDF is sort of a starting point of what does that world look like, and where do people fit in there, and then how do you put policies out there. And I agree with everybody, the conversation that's been had, because there is no one size fits all for any of this stuff. The concept of a chatbot is pretty intriguing, because it was sort of like in my own mind, I was kind of going through if you are at this level, these are the things that your next steps that you could possibly consider. And if you're at this level, these are the things that you could possibly consider. And so it definitely, to me, started that discussion of, how do you give guidance to people, knowing that people are all over the map on maturity and even just needs and focus areas. So the concept of something electronic, and since we are doing this partially with the digital services group, seems pretty intriguing to me, because it was very tough to get on a piece of paper all the permutations of where people might land, knowing that we have this very global best practices sharing idea that's tasked for this committee. So I really like that idea of leveraging technology to provide guidance and best practices.
Excellent. Thank you, Joe. Anybody else have any questions or comments about what I've shared?
I also will say, Sean, I like what you shared, because to me, it's a great conversation piece to perhaps bring some focus on where we ultimately land. I'm not sure this is exactly it, but I think it's a great place to start.
Good, thank you. Hearing nothing else, thank you for those that have shared your thoughts. I will carry this as an agenda item for our August meeting. That's when we meet next now. And maybe darn phone. Siri thought I was talking to her. Maybe we can review it there, and this will be something that we can garner, at least from those that are at the digital summit and attend the council meeting, some additional feedback, right? And help us shape it and see if it's something that seems meaningful and the council should continue to pursue. Stop sharing. Bounce back to it's me. Done with me. That wraps the formal part of our agenda today. We are now open to discussion, ideas, feedback. I think Robert Hankey is on. I know he has talked to me about something. Oh, before we go on to that, Mary, I do see your comment in the chat. Thank you very much. I'll make note of that as we look to develop the non-government side of the pillars. So, Robert, are you there?
Yes, I am.
All right. So Robert had I'm going to stop sharing. Sure, I have. Yep. I'll share what he provided. So Robert had reached out to me. Oh, and wanted to discuss. Well, I'm going to let him speak to it because he's got more of an obvious understanding than I do. But I thought it was good to bring before the council to see if there was others that were interested in this topic and may be able to sync with Robert on it, and not SINK, but SYNC. So can folks see? Oh yeah, I can see it there. There's a little bit of an eye chart.
Mr. Nairley, are you ready for me to proceed?
Yes, I think I am. Wait a minute. No, I'm not. How's that? Oh, there we go. I was trying to make sure I got it as large as possible for you, so go right ahead, Robert.
There we go. Good afternoon, folks. I just have a couple of cautions to begin with. I don't speak authoritatively. I'm down in the trenches, and I'm assuming that everybody that is observing is an expert in their own right. I also am well aware that state government can move slowly, and there's no specific ask here, particularly regarding funding. This is an awareness of something that is impacting a segment or sector, and it is very significant to us and may be significant to the state of Vermont from an economic development perspective. So with that said, let me introduce myself. It's Robert Hinkey. I am the president of Mechanical Systems Design Incorporated. We've been in business for about 30 years in Bennington, Vermont, and we focus on defense logistics, particularly with regards to the U.S. Army. What has happened at the DoD, or now Department of War, DOW level, is this thing called CMMC, or Capability Model Maturity Certification. This is not intended to be a brief that fully describes CMMC. It's simply to potentially open discussion and to at least make some other folks aware of something that is coming down the pike. I'm going to suggest for entities and sectors much more than just the defense industrial base. So you see capability model maturity certification that actually came out from Carnegie Mellon University any number of years ago, partially funded by the Department of Defense at the time. And there's also something called Capability Model Maturity Index, which has to do with business process maturity. And I'm going to come back to that because one of the central threads here is that CMMC, and I would say 800-171 or the underlying 853 are really have to be about business process maturity. And otherwise it becomes a challenge of, to be a little bit blunt, putting lipstick on a pig. So NIST 800-171, I'm actually false here because that's what's underlying CMMC, but underneath that is 853. And as you can see, third bullet down or fourth bullet down, Agency of Digital Services, literally within the last couple of weeks, Information Security Foundation's policy roots it in 853. As far as news sources for people that want to know about what's going on with CMMC in the trenches, there's the Reddit. Discord is a little bit dicey right now in terms of their personnel authentication, but Reddit is readily available and it's actually moderated by the same people on both. My objective here is to just identify this to I won't say my peers, but to people who are at least as knowledgeable as I, and say, hey, this is something that beyond just the defense industrial base, second time I've said this, is going to affect Vermont as a whole in a number of direct and indirect ways. And ultimately, as we'll see in a moment, I think this may merit a working group of one sort or another for the roughly 800 defense industrial base businesses in the state of Vermont responsible for about generating $500 million in annual revenue. On the right-hand column, again, this is not a brief about CMMC, but there's multiple levels. I like that in some of the others Vermont sources here, that there's multiple levels of awareness and capability. The bottom line is this is essentially applying enterprise level processes to even single or sole practitioners. It is top to bottom is essentially requiring you to build your business processes and the data that goes through those processes around cybersecurity. it from the defense industrial base. You see a figure there, roughly 200,000 U.S. defense industrial base. Yet there's only about 1,000 third-party assessors. That's one of the challenges. It's an external organization. Those certifications are between $30,000 and $50,000, and I think a realistic, holistic 4-year cost can reach $300,000, even for a relatively small organization. It is a do or die now for defense industrial base contracts. There is no room for maneuver. It requires business executive certification, and there's significant consequences. It's enforced by the Department of Justice through the False Claims Act. You're between a rock and a hard place. You're either going to do the 110 requirements for level 2, or you're not. And there's an annual certification required. And again, there are personal consequences to leadership. It's kind of interesting from an IT community perspective because, and I'm speaking to the converted, but this does not allow for IT as an afterthought. It really needs to be, in my opinion, fully supported by leadership, or it's just not going to work very well, and there's a risk of failure. Whole of business security regime. I'm one course away from an ITIL expert, so I'm a fan of IT service management and the underlying ITIL infrastructure library rubric. So service strategy, service design, service transition, and service operation. And this is a systems approach. It's more than just a help desk, although some of the businesses that are in that domain, software in that domain, seem to make it really just about the help desk. But it's really about operating level agreements internally, or if you're building, through an MSP, service level agreements. And it gets right down to, fit for purpose and fit for use. And it's really focused at the business level, and then you do IT. I'm coming to the end here. My information is about 840 Vermont defense industrial base, plus 500 million in revenue. Obviously, there's the big primes, majority of it, but there's lots of small folks too. I think one of the two takeaways here as to what does it mean for the potential people that are listening today, it's spreading beyond just the defense industrial base. So now NIH, if you're working with genomes, they're using CMMC on top of 800-171, on top of 853. Homeland Defense or agency is using this in part. NSF, small business agency, is using it at a very strict level. For example, they require, to meet the requirements, that you cannot use any equipment that's not actively supported. Whether that means the equipment is EOL'd, or it means that you have to have an active support contract on it, is not quite clear. Education, a big deal. We know that there's been all kinds of challenges at the federal level, all the way up to Harvard and the like. It is a real challenge for educational institutions because you're going to lose federal funding unless you have those requirements. Same for some parts of the transportation industry. And then to rile it up, it's basically a year and a half for somebody to complete working through this and do a system security plan. These are $100,000 a year people. And even if only a quarter or half of the Vermont Defense Industrial Base pursues CMMC or gets out of the business, that's going to suck up this expertise, and it's going to affect the IT industry here in Vermont. So with that said, I've done my piece. I appreciate Mr. Naylor for giving me this opportunity to kind of brief it. There's an interagency process, I hope, gets kicked off, and I'd be happy to answer any questions. Again, I'm not an expert, I'm learning. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Robert. For those that are on the call, I put your email address in the chat. So if there's anyone that's wants to connect with you directly to either learn more or shares concerns about what's happening on the space, they can reach out to you. I will pause there and see if there's anyone that has questions for Robert.
No, but thank you. It was a good presentation.
One more thing I
Agreed.
would add, if you do the numbers, and it's a minimum of $100,000 in the first year, even if it's only 200 businesses, we're talking about $20 to $40 million expense that's going to accrue to the Vermont Defense Industrial Base. So it's a big deal for us. So I'm happy to discuss this further. And my end hope is that we have some sort of working group that are focused on the needs of the Defense Industrial Base.
Thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Anyone else, comments, questions, thoughts about what Robert presented? All right, thank you all. Other topics? Anybody else that's on the phone that's not part of the council that has something they want to share, advocate for, bring up? Now's the time. Alrighty then. If there's nothing else, we've reached the end of our meeting. We're gonna give folks half hour back. Before we adjourn, I will need a motion to adjourn by a council member, a second, put it to vote.
So moved,
Sean,
Eric.
this is Erica. I'll make a motion.
All right, Erica's motion.
Second.
Is that Eric?
Eric
Yep.
will second.
Eric. All right. Council members, all those in favor of adjourning, either raise your hand or say aye.
I
Anyone opposed or abstain? Excellent. Thank you all. I will, for the council members, I will follow up with an email on the pillars and stuff, and I will update the meeting schedule so that your calendars will reflect August 4th in South Burlington for our next meeting. Stay tuned on timing for that. So thank you, everyone. Hopefully August won't be as wet. Have a good day.
Thank you.